Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 22nd episode of Visioncon Spotlight, your in-depth look at the nerds you love. I'm your host, Zach Wilson, but you didn't come here to see me today. You came to see the woman of the hour. She's the indomitable force helping lead the charge for more diversity in the tech industry. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the president of the Geek Foundation, the one, the only, Krista Peryer. Krista, how you doing today?
Doing good. Hello. Thanks for having me. I will say for this episode, it'll be the geeks that you love.
Hell yeah. Oh man, I would have thought of that. So, Krista, society is getting better. I know this past few weeks aren't a great example of that, but society is getting better with being more open-minded and, being a bit more accepting of diversity, but we are nowhere close to done, especially in the tech industry. And so that is something that is very central to what you are pursuing. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to kind of fight the good fight, and how did that lead to what is now the Geek Foundation?
Well, so the reason I got interested in it was because I had grown up, as a girl I was really into video games and comic books and, all of the stuff that traditional, at my age, that boys liked, and I played with boy toys, and stuff like that. But I just didn't, growing up in the 80s, I didn't have a whole lot of role models to be like, oh, you're really into a lot of these things, you should go into STEM fields, or I was really into space and science, and I was a mathlete and everything. I was the perfect match for it, but I was a girl, so I didn't have people to be like, hey, you should, go into science or, go work for NASA or whatever, so I spent high school kind of not really knowing what I wanted to do. I took through Spanish 5, it was maybe I'll be an international interpreter, and then I just never did anything with it, and still just couldn't figure out exactly what it was that I wanted to do because nothing really just seemed that interesting to me. But in 2009, I started dating a guy who was a computer programmer, and he would bring his laptop over and do some of his work at my house sometimes. And I saw his work, and it just immediately made sense to my brain, watching somebody do computer programming. So I immediately tried to figure out how can I get into the field? How do I learn how to become a computer programmer? Especially without the 4-year traditional college route, as I was a single mom, and all that stuff. So I was, not able to think about probably considering the traditional route of college. So I started asking around people that I knew, or that knew people that were developers, how do I get into the field? And I, my partner didn't experience the same thing I did. So we make kind of an interesting group for what we do. But I kind of did get met with that gatekeeper mentality that we hear a lot about in tech, of it's too hard, or if you haven't been doing it your whole life, or, if you, it was shocking, how much I kept getting met with that. So I started getting really interested in it. Basically, I was just yeah, that doesn't sound right, so I was I'm going to start studying the industry. And I started studying the industry and seeing there's such a huge need for jobs and for talent, and just there's so many employers across the entire world. I study the entire world, job postings, and they can just never take the job postings down because there's just not enough talent, because it is heavily outweighed by, men in the field right now. So I started kind of, researching more and more. And I watched organizations like Girls Who Code, pop up, and Women Who Code pop up in 2011 and 2012. And was we actually have a really large tech industry here in Springfield. Why not start a school here in Springfield? Because we have Jack Henry, O'Reilly Automotive, Expedia, all these, places that hire a lot of tech talent that people don't think of as tech jobs, and then we've got other places Bass Pro actually has a huge tech department, Cerner, which is Cox Health, they have a huge tech department. There's really big companies here that they're always hiring for tech talent and just can never fill the job. So they never even take their job postings down because they just don't have enough to do it. So I started kind of studying it more and more, and was okay, well, what if I change the question from how do I get involved to would you hire someone on if they didn't have a traditional 4-year degree? And then I kept getting like yeses, so like I was like, okay, so this could be a thing, like what we do here at the Geek Foundation, like the classes that we teach, I started seeing more and more that the jobs, like rather than requiring a 4-year degree, they were more like skilled trade positions, like if we could teach somebody the fundamentals of what they need to become a web developer, entry-level web developer, or an entry-level IT person, then we could get a lot of people into those jobs that are so high demand, and they're incredibly high paying too, so I started like asking around people in the local tech industry, like if I started up a school here, would you consider hiring on our graduates? And everybody was really supportive of it. So in 2015, I met my partner. She actually went to school. Her reasoning for getting involved with this is because she went to college and got the traditional 4-year degree. She it was the only girl in her class until her senior year. So and that was only one other girl. I mean, and I actually even just have been recently talking to some of the colleges around recently. Only 9% of the students involved at one of the local colleges here are women. Only 9%. I mean, and then you hear statistics too, like, our class, that's our our IT class is an A+ certification program. So you can go through our class and get the A+ certification, and then you can go into entry-level positions. Some interesting stats there is that only 7% of A+ certification holders are women. 7%. Yeah. So, I mean, and then you have times like now, where organizations like Girls Who Code and Women Who Code developed, and that was even, like I said, 2011, 2012, almost 10 years ago now. And we're really only now at the point where companies like Google and Microsoft and all those other are saying, okay, we really do need diversity, in our thing. How can we get more women into the field? So that's kind of where I stepped in and said, like, hey, we can offer education over a short amount of time to get you into these positions and get you started, so, and then all of our classes are free because we want to work specifically with getting more women, minorities, and other underrepresented populations, and then low-income individuals into the tech field. So our classes are free so that we kind of take away any barriers that there are to getting involved.
Well, and those gatekeeper mentalities, they're inherently flawed because,
yeah.
I mean, don't let the hair fool you guys. I am a male. And so it was interesting that you said when your partner at the time brought over his laptop and started doing code stuff, and it just immediately clicked in your brain. On the opposite end of that coin, I took one web design class ever in my life, and it definitely didn't. I didn't get it at all. I was so lucky to have charmed up the teacher enough to essentially do my project for me. But so doesn't matter how you identify, what gender you are, anybody can do the tech stuff as long as you have the knack for it and you're taught, and you get the support, which is exactly what you are doing here with the Geek Foundation. So I wanted to take a look, kind of some of the stuff that you provide, all of the just kind of details. So run me down all of the kind of services and the kind of classes you guys teach there at the Geek Foundation.
Yeah, so we do kids classes. We've been actually doing those for about 5 years now. So we started our kids programs up a little bit after we kind of got started, and we've been doing those at like the libraries and boys and girls clubs and just different places kind of around town. And those like serve to get kids interested in tech so that they want to go into tech careers as they get older. Because as we all understand, like even though like we talk about tech being the future, of things, the future is right now. Like every company is essentially a tech company now. You've got to have some knowledge of computers. You got to, with cell phones that we use, with, everything. Websites, all of that stuff. Like every company essentially has either, a website or e-commerce or an IT need or something like that. So, we kind of try to teach those classes that can help you get into those fields. So our adult classes, we do currently right now an IT boot camp and a web development boot camp. And both of those are about 6 months long. They're 2 hours per night, 2 nights per week for that 6 month duration. We also provide daycare for anyone who needs it, and we provide for the A+ certification program. Since you get the certification for it and you have to test into it, it costs $500 a try. We pay for 2 tries of that as well, so that we are really just taking out any barriers at all that would hinder anyone from being successful in our programs. And you mentioned, not really getting it and not understanding it yourself, but like our classes are so heavily weighed on, like, I am very involved in the classes, making sure that all of our students has every option to be successful. So like if somebody's really struggling, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go talk to the class and figure out what we can do. Is it mentors that would help? Is it, having study groups that would help? Is it more interaction, from the teacher? So I really believe that, anyone can do it. It just takes dedication and the right support. So that's why we kind of see adults of all ages, and kids of all ages, because we want everyone to have the opportunity to get into these fields. Because unlike some other career industries, like, manufacturing or healthcare is a great example. We have a huge strain on our healthcare hiring positions here because there's so many people that have gone through the schools that there's not enough jobs, so the pay wages go down. That's never going to happen in the tech industry, because the tech industry keeps evolving at such a high rate that the languages are constantly changing that are needed for things. The IT strain is constantly changing, especially through COVID. We've seen a huge strain on IT needs. We've got things like, robotics, wearable technologies, automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, cloud computing. I mean, there's just endless opportunities, and all of these fields are just going to grow exponentially, especially fields like data sciences, your artificial intelligence, quantum computing is a new, thing that we're hearing a lot about. There will just be consistently new fields to go into. So with that being said, there's never going to be a point in time like where the wages are going to go down, because there'll always be new jobs evolving and there'll always be more need. So like I always tell our students when they come to me and they get interviewed for our classes, like, start here, start with IT, start with web development, especially web development, but like, don't stop there. Like, keep learning and keep learning new skill sets, and you can make better and better pay and make yourself more and more valuable. So it's not just workforce development. It's not just economic development, because as you know, like the tech industry has a lot of opportunity for remote jobs. So you could even like work from here, but work for a company in Silicon Valley and make, 100,000 up, and then all that money goes back into our economy. But it's also personal development. It's personal development because there's endless opportunities to keep learning and make yourself more and more valuable.
Well, and the fact that you also provide like childcare really means anyone can do this, so long as you take that leap of faith and surpass maybe all of those things you were taught growing up, that you can't do this because X, or you're not supposed to do this because Y.
Right.
And so already you guys are modern superheroes. So for the folks watching at home, how can they contribute to the cause? How can they donate to provide more accessibility to people through the Geek Foundation?
Yeah, so we're obviously always looking for sponsors and donors, and things to help us, because while the classes are free for our students, obviously it costs to put them through, and to teach the classes and all that stuff as well. So we do have, any opportunities for donations is gladly appreciated. We also will hopefully be having events later this year. So as those events come up, we will definitely be looking for volunteers, to support the cause and be, there and help us out. We are always looking for teachers who would want to teach any of our classes as well, like anything from our kids classes, which are usually like a 1 day, a couple hours per time, or our teachers classes even, 6-month-long boot camps. And then we do have ideas for shorter period classes that we want to do in the future. So connecting with us is a really great idea if you're just interested in what we do at all. Like, there's a lot of opportunities to help out, and we could definitely use the help for sure. And I would suggest also for everyone to sign up for our newsletter, because anything that comes up that we have events for, or things like that in the future, we'll be posting through those.
Mm-hmm. So aside from the newsletter and obviously the website, where else can people go to find out maybe some of the day-to-day stuff with the Geek Foundation, or any fun tidbits that you guys might post?
Yeah, we do post on Facebook. We do have an Instagram as well and a Twitter feed. Right now, I'm kind of running all of those things. So unless it's something big, I don't really post a lot. And we all understand that too. Like Facebook is not the greatest outlet sometimes because not everybody gets to see what you post, unless you pay for ads. But I would suggest following us there too. But the newsletter is going to be the best source for like direct information and knowing that you're staying up to date with what we're doing.
Well, guys, that's about all the time we've got for episode 22 of Visioncon Spotlight. So before we wrap things up, though, Krista, are there any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to leave us on?
Don't be afraid of the tech industry, for sure, because everybody hears you got to be some kind of genius or math genius or, guy or whatever it may be. And none of those things are true at all. So just try.
And no gatekeepers allowed.
No gatekeepers allowed. Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 22 of Visioncon Spotlight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, I'm your host, Zach Wilson, but much more importantly, this has been my very special guest, Krista Peryer. Make sure to check out all the links down in the description box below. And until next time, guys, always remember that life's better when you have friends to share it with.